Yeah guys, I'm back and I have extended Obby myself for a little. Add these extra platforms on every stage. But we do not currently have checkpoints. We're gonna plus here add a folder like that. Name it checkpoints. Hoverboard. Is it done like that maybe if we want to? 8 inside like that. Really this doesn't matter. Green like that. Then maybe when the checkpoints say what stage you're on. Click the plus on the port this time. Search surface GUI. Select the top. Also service UI, a text label. For the size is type 1, and it should immediately turn to 1010. Commas in between. Let's do 1 for the background transparency. And you could just set the text size down here, like 20, whatever. I'm gonna click check text skills, which makes it like big enough to fit. I'm gonna type 2, because this is the second stage. Then I'm gonna scroll up all here, position, size, and rotation. 90, and that works like that. And then really important, the number there is optional. I'm gonna click on this part, set the name to 2. That is really important. And I'll copy that over there and name that free. Maybe we're back to 1 to make it easier to work with. Open the Surface GUI. Then type a grid. Now what we're actually gonna do is we need a script. I'm not actually gonna put that inside the checkpoints folder. You can, like how I did with Killbox, you can totally do that. But I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna add it to the server script service, which is a place where you can store scripts and they'll run correctly and everything. Just to just a little bit weird turn all over in workspace because you want to be able to find them easily and stuff. But we still need the checkpoints folder. So for that we're gonna do local folder again equals script parent actually before you might think. Oh, we're actually not doing that like that. We're doing workspace checkpoints because script's parent isn't the folder. The script's parent is the server script service. The reason we can just type workspace like this because workspace is predetermined by Roblox. And I believe it's the only service that is like that because if you try to type like server script service, that's not gonna work and you will have to type game.server service. So for workspace it's just like that, and as you can see if you open workspace you can find the checkpoints folder in there and just name exactly checkpoints like we have spelled it here. For I card hash folder children. So this line is actually the same as the other scripts. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna open a kill script like here. Make sure to name that kill server or something like that. It's a killbreak script and it's on the server. And we can grab all of this like that, paste that in. We're not gonna need some cooldown stuff. And I want this to make sure it's a character and everything. I'll close that folder, open this again and name this script like leader stats. And if you name this script exactly leader stats, you're actually gonna be able to see the stage up in the top right corner. Like up here. But it's usually in most games. But if you don't want that, you don't have to. For the script doesn't actually have to be called leader stats, but a folder which we're gonna create has to be named leader stats. gonna be instance.new folder. And even though we identified the variables, leader stats, the object is just gonna be called folder, folder. Leader stats.name equals leader stats. And what is this folder? This folder is actually a place where we store all the players' data, such as the stage they're on, and we have to store that inside the player. But we currently don't know the player because it's a server-side script. It only runs once, not once per player, such as a client script. We're gonna go up to above folder actually, because I like to identify the services on top. The local players equals game, and you can type game.players. It's often better to do get service players. Then we're gonna do players, and there's an inbuilt function inside of the players, this players, that you get a player added. See when a player gets added, and then there's an event reconnected, just like how we did here. Instead of the hit this time, we're getting out a player from this. Just kind of have to learn these events, and then we're gonna copy this, paste that inside of there. Actually remove that. But then we're gonna check down here, we're gonna do local player players dot get player from character. Make sure to spell that right. That's really important. Like this. And then we're gonna take the character here. This can return null. So of course we're gonna check if player then. This is another way to check. Now we can do local leader stats equals player find first child. Leader stuff like this, which is gonna reference folder up there. This right here, this leader stats has to be the same as that one. No matter if it's the same as that one, it has to be the same as that one. That one and that one has to be exactly the same, spelling wise. So now we have the data where we can modify the stage, but we don't actually have a stage yet. We got a local stage equals instance dot new. You might see number value in here. We're actually not gonna use that because int value is often a little bit better. The only problem with int values is they can't go to like 1.5. But we're not gonna stage 1.5 or 1.6. We're just gonna stage 1, 2, 3, so on. So this works perfectly fine. Stage dot name equals stage. This stage is exactly what you're gonna be seeing in the corner. So it's gonna say stage like up in the top right. If we do stage dot value equals 1, this is the value you start on. And of course, nothing will work unless we set a parent, which is gonna be the later stuff we just created. And if we play now, we should see stage up in the corner. And we don't because there's an error. And this is on dot. That's not supposed to be on dot. It's supposed to be that. And this doesn't work because they're not actually parenting the leader stats to the player. Well, player like that. So now we have ourselves a stage up here, but if we move on to the other checkpoint, it's not gonna do stuff, it's not gonna change. Those are also unanchored. So let's make sure to click that one, then shift click the other one, the multi-select. There's the anchor button. You can also select them right here, shift clicking. That also works. So like, let's make sure to open up the right script here. And now that we have the leader stats right here, we can just, since we actually named this 2 and 3, we can just take the local stage we need, which is leader stats find for child stage. Now, unless the player added function hasn't loaded yet, or isn't finished, which it should have, it's always great making sure. We're gonna do if leader stats, then gonna take this in there, and then we're gonna do a if stage, then stage dot value equals. We can actually just take the portal name here, but since this is a int value, we need a number, right? The name is like free, but it's not free like this. It's actually free like that. It's a string. And we can just take this and wrap it into two number, 2% like that around. Be sure to also two equals right there. And this should set the stage to 2 when I touch the 2 and so on. But the thing is, if I go over here, touch 3, then go back, touch 2, it's gonna decrease the stage. And what if you fall down the obby or somehow touch the start? You don't want to lose all your progress, right? That's really important. So what we're gonna do, if to number port dot name, this the checkpoint number you're touching, is higher than that stage dot value, then actually change the value, otherwise we're not gonna do stuff. So now touch 2, we get stage 2. Touch the 3, we get stage 3. And we touch the 2, we're not going back to stage 2 because we don't want to reset. So this works. But now we need a way to actually respawn the player when they die. Where? Gonna do local, actually, yeah, local character equals player.character. Character is a thing in the workspace, which is the player's actual model. But you can actually access that from the player by doing dot character. Close out the workspace, it looks a little bit cleaner. But this might return nil because player added fires before the character respawned in. This is a common issue. So instead we're gonna do player character added connect function. So we're gonna get the character right here. There. The character local humanoid equals character, and instead of find for child, we're gonna do wait for child, because even though the character model itself is loaded in, maybe the humanoid has not. And if there is no humanoid, it's nil, then it's just gonna keep waiting forever. I'm gonna do humanoid dot died connect function ink, and then we're gonna print that print died. And first we gotta make sure that works, right? Yeah, that works. It's always great to playtest to make sure everything works. You can delete that now. And now you might be thinking, okay, so we had a stage number, we find the actual stage's position and teleport the player there, character there, right? And that might work, but it won't because the character's dead. As you can see, if we click the players here and explore, you can see a respawn time of 3. You can change that if you want them to respawn faster, like that, you know? I'm gonna keep it on 3, but I'm gonna do a task.wait 3. You could also do an event from when they spawn in, right? That would also work, but I'm gonna do it this way. And I'm gonna do local stage object, which is gonna be the actual checkpoint. Or you could call that like checkpoint if you wanted to. Equals folder, which is checkpoint folder if you remember here. And since these are called by the numbers, and the stage value is a number, right? We can just do find first child, and we can't do the stage.value like this time either, because we had to turn the string into number, but this requires a string, so we have to do toString instead. This, now that's successful as string, which is what names use, and every piece of text uses, because this can, be named like checkpoint text, something like that. So it's a string. We're gonna check if checkpoint, then character, and you don't actually move the character. How Roblox does it is everything the characters move to a object, a part, named the humanoid root part inside the character. So we're gonna do local. You could write humanoid root part, but I'm just writing root part for short. Character, find first child, humanoid root part. A pretty long name, but spelled exactly like that. If root part, then the root part of position equals checkpoint of position. But if we do this, they're gonna spawn in the ground. So we do plus position in a 3D world. It's a vector 3 value. We're gonna do 3.new. We're gonna do 0 because it's x-axis. Set up there. Y-axis, we may want like 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna choose 3 here and see if that works. And then 0 on the z-axis, of course. Now we should respawn at the checkpoint, right? So if I go to 2 and die, we should respawn at 2, right? And you might see that that doesn't work. Instead of using the die event here, let's print up here. Let's see. Spawn should fire again. Yeah, spawn fires again. So we're switching to a dedicated spawn event. Now we can remove the wait. I'm not expecting this to work. It's just a small improvement. And we're on stage 1. But if we actually go ahead and get stage 2, we spawn on stage 2. At stage 3. On stage 3. And so on and so forth. We need the stage to save, right? That's really important. So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna do this above here because we only need a player for that. Local success equals nil. Then local player data equals nil because the data is gonna be nil when you start. Then local attempt equals 1. And you might think this is unnecessary, but you want to make sure it's a secure saving system that doesn't break. We're going to repeat and it should spawn in until like that. Until success, so when it has succeeded, or attempt equals 5. This is to make sure it doesn't repeat forever if the data can't load. And if success player data equals equal function. Okay. And this is a little bit complicated, so I'm not going to go into depth on it. We're creating another function inside of a pickle, which basically returns the error message if there is one. That's basically what the pickle does. Database get a sync. Here we need a player, but we actually need a use ready because multiple players can have a same VM name. This is gonna be overlined here because we don't actually have a database. That's not a thing Roblox has. What we're gonna do is we're gonna say local database equals game, and you could just do get service data store service as it says right there. But I'm gonna do local data store service up here. Game get service data store service, and this service is basically what handles saving systems and saving data, all that kind of stuff. You can also use it to create leaderboards. Although you use order data store for that, but we won't get into that today. We use the data store service here, and then we can do get data store, then data store like that. If you type anything else here, that should be fine. But just do data store. Got it. And if this is complicated and everything, yeah, this is the most complicated part. But a game needs a saving system, doesn't it? Of course, we have to increase the attempt, so it's like the attempt's gotta reach 5 eventually, right? And then if not success, then it's gonna warn that the script has failed, right? It's gonna warn the player that like that, which is the data or the error, you know? It's gonna warn why it doesn't work. The player won't really be able to see that, but yep, it warns the player and then it waits because if the 5 attempts happen all at once, then they're not gonna matter, right? And now we're gonna do if success, then if not player data. If success, if it's successful, which if it doesn't have player data, it will still be successful. We will do player data exactly like that. Equals, and this will be on table. And inside of here, we will do this is on table, we'll do squared, just like that. String, since it's a name, stage equals 1. And this is essentially a second stage value, because when adding more values, all you have to do, stage, like if you wanted like some currency like gold, equals, for example, 50, and this right there is the sorting amount, right? Maybe you wanted deaths equals 0, so on and so forth, right? You would just add them like that with a comma after each one. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna create a global table because we can't access player that is just created here. We can't access that from created here. We can't access that from all over the script. We might want to access it somewhere else. We're gonna do session data. I'm gonna call this one. Usually call it in my games like that. That doesn't matter. What we're gonna do afterwards is we're gonna do session data, and if you just set the session data to player data, it's gonna work great because like if I join, it says the session data to player data. But someone else joins, it replaces my data. You want to add the data, not replace it. Because it's a table, we can use square player.user ID equals player data. So it will take the table and add like my name, for example, or my user ID in this case. Then inside of that, it will have my data. And if someone else joins, it will add their user ID with their data, right? Hope you understand. Session data squared player.user ID again, because if they have data, we're gonna set that to the player data as well. And now this is a common issue, right? You do that twice. What we'll do instead is we'll do it afterwards, right? Because we're gonna do it anyways. Like, we only need it once, right? The thing is, if the stage doesn't exist, right? It breaks for some reason. We want extra safety net. We're gonna, if not, session data for the player dot user ID, then dot the stage, then oh, and if we don't have it, it's gonna take session data squared player user ID dot stage, then set that to 1 because that's the default, and you would copy this and do that for, if you, for example, at gold, type it correctly as a currency and set that to the starting amount, same as up here. Just a little extra safety net that I recommend you have. And then this is fully optional what I'm showing now, but I like to print session data layer.user ID just for debugging issues because it's not gonna break, but if you update it, add something new and mess something up, it can help you find the issue faster. And now we had a stage in the data, but we also have the stage in the value, right? We want to sync them, right? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna do stage. But if you type stage like this, it references the variable there. Stage dot value, the value of stage, session data, squared layer, user ID, stage, and this time we're not doing two number because this isn't like one, just one, right? It's just gonna be numbers. This works, but it also has to update this value like reverse, right? Just update the stuff that it actually saves because it only saves the stuff in the table. Just update that when this one changes. When we hit the dot change, and this fires when the like value changes. So whenever we touch a new checkpoint down here, the stage dot value change to that, this thing is gonna fire, which then we can do session data squared layer user ID to set dot stage and set that to the stage value, right? That works. And this is it for joining, but when players leave, we also want it to work, right? And for this one, we're actually gonna do a function called player leaving. And of course we need the player, and this doesn't fire automatically, but it's a reason I create the function myself. So I'm just creating it right when the event's fired. And you're gonna see later. So first we need to check if they have data. Player dot user I. It's not gonna show the recommendation here because it doesn't know what player is. We're gonna do the local success again. It's nil. Local error message because we wanna be able to send out the error message if it breaks. So players know why. Pretty important. What we're gonna be doing now is that, of course, as it says here, we repeat. The Roblox AI knows what we're doing. The assistant or whatever. Error message. As P call returns error message as the first one. We use this right here, the first one. For them. And you might be noticing that these have the same name, right? Generally want to avoid that, but in this situation it works. This one is identified up here. So in here, if you reference player data, like that, it's gonna be this one. But it only exists inside of this repeat function. So out here it's gonna be the one from up there. In this case it works, but generally avoid that, yeah. which is why we're setting it to the error message here, right? We're generally gonna do a pretty similar thing, right? Like how we did it last time. What we're gonna do, we're gonna do, but we actually gotta like save it to the data store, right? And set async is the common way to do it, but update async is actually a little bit better. It's just a little bit more consistent overall. So we want to be using that, so it's a little bit different approach to what maybe if you've done a saving system before, you probably just set async. Old data, that, and we new data is the session data squared. Player.user ID, that's data they have like right now they want to save. If not, type new data, copy this exactly as how I write it, equals table, then return old data, return HTTP service, right? Actually, no. Why am I saying HTTP service? Usually in my games, I'm pretty used to JSON encoding them and stuff. That's for strings and stuff, but we don't actually have to do any of that. So we just have to return the new data. And this doesn't work here because after using not an if statement, go to the parentheses for some reason. I don't know why. It's kind of a Roblox only thing I feel like, but for some reason that's how it works. And if it doesn't success, we warn error message. Then we test it. Wait for it. Same as up there, right? Then until of course the success or temp equals 5, right? And now we actually have to save this stuff, right? Because this isn't a player added event, it's just a function. And we're gonna do player removing, which is when they leave, connect function. Instead of creating a function like this, we already have a function. So we can just type player leaving into like that. Make sure that's those parentheses, but we don't want those. And what we also wanna do is we wanna do game bind to close, which is like when you leave in studio, when it shutdowns, all that kind of stuff. Bind to close. Then we will game bind to close. We'll connect this to a function, right? Rent left to make sure that works. There's an error on line 20. This doesn't have a name. The player data, right? Did I remove that by mistake? Yeah, it's supposed to stay. Guessing we're gonna. Oh, yeah. You have to publish the game to actually access data store. So we're gonna name this Obby tutorial game. Gonna name it like that. Tutorial game like that. Save. Post that and it's gonna reload the project. Then we can publish the Roblox, but it's still not gonna work because the two-click file here. Of course, where you say publish, there's experience settings. I wanna click, go into security, and you have to enable Studio Access to API services. Otherwise it can't access data store. So that's one really important thing that you often forget to add. Let's see now if it prints left. And it does print left, right? What we're gonna do with this is that when it's a shutdown, when like a game shutdowns, everyone's gonna get kicked, right? So we can loop through all players. Pairs instead of pairs here. It doesn't matter, it just allows you to get an index, which we actually don't need, but for certain situations you do. And of course the player, which we'll get from here, right? It will loop through players, which we identified at the top here is here. There's all the players inside of it, currently only me. This is all of the players inside of it. So we'll save it for everyone when it shutdowns too, because player removing doesn't fire correctly then. Just to make sure, right? So now that we're doing this, let's try. Let's go on to stage 2. If we die, of course, we're gonna respawn to stage 2. Gotta make sure to play test everything in case something broke. Gonna leave. Like that. Play again. We're back at stage 2, right? Yeah, and that's actually it for this tutorial. This is a really short series, only 2 episodes. But I really hope you enjoyed making this game. And you can continue to expand on it yourself. You want to add more stages, maybe some new mechanics, and so on. This is just the basics. But yeah, like and subscribe, and that's it.